Okay, we will start now. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're starting today another DecisionCAMP session. And it's a little bit strange time now, considering pandemic and US election. So we don't have too many participants. It's quite unusual, but we will have this session recorded and available from DecisionCAMP channel. And today I'm glad to introduce our presenter from ProcessMaker, well-known business process management engine. And Dipo will make introduction and will talk about building lightweight applications using both business rules and workflow technologies. Dipo, take over.
Thanks, Jacob. Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm really excited to be doing this. So like he said, we're just going to show a walkthrough of how we could build lightweight composable process applications using rules and workflow. I'll just quickly talk about ProcessMaker, and I guess most of us know what Open Rules Decision Manager is all about. And then we'll look at the process we're going to build, and then we'll do a demo of the process, and then I'll take questions on the process that we've built. So about ProcessMaker, it's the business process management solution and a digital process automation platform. And we're really excited about the most recent award we just got. That's the Cody Award as the best digital process automation solution. And that is the validation for us that what we're building is on the right track, and our vision for a low-code platform that allows non-technical users to rapidly deploy process applications and proof of concepts and solve business problems without having to write code is on the right course. So this is what the platform looks like, and like I said, it's basically a platform for putting together process-based applications with little to no code. And what we keep trying to do is create these building blocks that non-technical users and even technical users also can use to rapidly compose processes or process applications. So once we think of applications that needs to move from one party to another party, you want to do validations, ProcessMaker is the right tool for that kind of thing. On the screen here, we can see a sample of some of the screenshots. So we have the screen builder, which is a drag and drop interface where you can easily create a form. We have dynamic UI where you can create things like dashboards and charts to show key performance indicators directly. We have the process modeler also on the left there, where you can design the workflow for the process itself. And Open Rules, as we know, is a decision management service solution. Basically allows you to define your business rules and very common tools like Excel and Google Sheets, and you can define those rules and publish them in cloud or on-premise, and this drives your business processes as they go. So you don't have to go back and modify the applications, but the business analyst can easily make changes in an Excel to the business rules and publish them, and the applications that are driven on those business rules immediately start using those rules to make the decisions as they progress, which is what we're going to see today. So what are we building today? I've taken the liberty of borrowing two of the samples from the Open Rules samples. So the sample projects, one of them is the loan pre-qualification, and the other is the loan origination. And I've taken those two ideas and just tried to merge it into a single process. And the idea of the process is that we'd have a customer going to a bank to check if they qualify for a loan, and we drive that decision using the loan pre-qualification process. If the customer qualifies, we then redirect the customer to fill out a loan application, which then kicks off the loan origination process. As we've seen in the first example, we are using the business rules after the customer and the banker has done a review. So we take some input from the customer, take some input from the banker, and then use the business rules engine to decide whether the customer is qualified or not. For the loan origination, on the other hand, when we get the customer application, we're using the rules engine to drive the process, and we only send it to the banker if there's a need, if the business rule decides that it cannot make a decision and needs to be referred to a banker for a final decision. So just to quickly show us what we've borrowed that. So I've borrowed this primer, from the DMN primer, the loan origination process. So for the loan application bit, we'll collect the application data. We'll call the rules engine to determine the bureau strategy. If it needs to go to the bureau, we'll go to a bureau service to get the bureau data, the credit data, and then send back to the application routing rules engine also to determine the route. And if it's a decline or refer or accept, we'll make the decision as appropriate. So back to our slide here. What would we be using to build this? We'll be using ProcessMaker and Open Rules, like I've said. On the ProcessMaker side, we'll be using the process modeler, the screen builder, and the data connectors. And for Open Rules, we'll be using Excel to define the business rules, and we'll publish those rules to AWS as Lambda functions. So let's get into the demo itself. So I'm just gonna a second, head over to my screen here. So this is what ProcessMaker application itself looks like. Here we have the business process modeler, and this is the process that we have put together. I'll quickly walk us through the process and an overview of some of the elements. So here we can see a BPMN business process model, and we start with the process starts with the customer. We're using a feature in ProcessMaker called a web entry. And what a web entry is basically it allows you to take a form and embed it on a website or directly available as the link that you can share. And with that web entry, the typical use cases would have a customer or a bank embed the form for the customer to fill out on the website. And then once that is submitted, it goes to the banker to review the request. After the review, we call the business rules engine. So we call the business rules engine using the what we call a data connector. So this is using a data connector, which we have set up to talk to Open Rules. I'm going to just show us on this quickly. And true to nature about being low code, the connection to Open Rules engine is, we're not writing any code to do that. It's basically a UI. We define an endpoint. So here's some of the endpoints that I've defined already. One to get the loan routine, one for the bureau strategy, and some other rules we have available in this instance. So just quickly to show what the bureau strategy looks like, for example. So typically when we're setting up a connector, but just define what kind of method. So the URL, I'll show us how we get this from when we publish the service. When we publish the rules to AWS, we get this URL and we just apply that there. And then we do a mapping of the request itself so a mapping of the ProcessMaker variables to the Open Rules variables. We'll just do a mapping here, and that's all. We can always test it and confirm that everything works as expected. Coming back to our process, we also have the different tasks that we've defined. Here we have the banker review request. You can see that this is another building block, which is the screen. I'm just going to show us what the screen builder looks like from here. And so here's the typical screen in ProcessMaker. We can have on the left side, you can see the different controls that are available. And building the screen simply involves dragging those controls into the form. And we could preview the form, see what the form itself looks like, and we can test to see how the form would behave when the customer fills out the form. And so coming back to the process, what we have here is would send the request to the rules engine. If the rules of and when we get the response back, we'll check whether the customer is qualified or not, and then we use the email notification element, which sends an email to the customer that they're qualified or they are not qualified. If the customer is qualified, we redirect the customer back to complete a loan application on this task. And when he completes the application, we call the bureau strategy rules engine, and then from there we make a decision whether we determine what kind of strategy to use, whether we're going to do a credit check. In that case, we are simulating a call to an external service to get the bureau data. Otherwise, we could also just make a direct pass on to the next rule to check how to route the request. This decision could be either to accept the request and we notify the customer that their loan is accepted. We could decline it based on the rules that we've defined and notify the customer that their loan is declined, or also send it to a banker to review the application and make a decision. So having said that, let's take a quick look at how the rules itself, how the business rules have been defined. So over here in my instance here, I have a sample, one of the decisions tables that we've defined in open rules. And what we're doing is there are quite a number of rules in the loan origination bit, but this is the one we'll modify to show how the rules drive the process in real time. And what we're doing is we're checking that if a customer has a credit score less than 750, but the risk category is either low or medium, then we'll refer the request. If it's greater than 750, would accept the application, otherwise would decline the application. So let me start the process by filling out a loan application. So this is the form that we've designed in the process, the web entry form, and I'm just going to fill it out with some data so we can see how this would work in practice. So I'm just going to fill this out. Charlene, last time Moody. I'm going to use my email. Score of 735. Monthly income is 10,000. Payments is 2.5. She has a mortgage and has other loans. For the credit card balance, I'm going to put here 2.5. And the education loan balance is 0. And for this purpose, Charlene wants to borrow 100,000 for 36 months and needs it for, say, education. And right now we're going to file for our requests. And once we submit the request, I'm going to heading back to our process. We're coming back to the next task is the banker task, where the banker has to review the request. And one of the things we also have within the platform is being able to drive how tasks are assigned to users. It could be assigned directly to a user, or it could go to a pool of users in the group. And in this case, we're sending it to a group of bankers. So if I come to the self-service task, I would see the request that has come in, which is this one. I'm going to click on it to review the request. I'm going to claim it from the pool. And as you can see, you can also reassign the task to someone else. So let's say a banker picks it and decides that it's not something they want to do, they can reassign it to someone else. In this case, we're going to give a rating. I'm just going to select an internal credit rating of F and an analyst opinion and say pre-qualify. Once this is done, from our process, we can see this goes to the rules engine, and the rules engine is going to make a decision on this and notify the customer based on the decision made. So here I have my email. I'm going to just refresh that while we wait for the mail to come in. So we can see the mail has come into Charlene, and receive the email notification saying we are pleased to inform you that you qualify for your loan of $100,000. So I'd copy that link and just head up here and continue the application. And right now we can see here the information we filled previously is already pre-filled. We're just going to add a few more details about Charlene in here to complete the application. So for monthly expenses, we have 3,000, she's 51, married and existing customer, employment status is self-employed, and social security, just put something there. And we can also build multi-page forms within ProcessMaker. And one of the benefits of that is that when you have very long forms, you want to be able to break it down into simple navigation that the user can, as opposed to having to scroll down to fill out the forms. We'll select a standard loan with a rate of 0.08% and submit the application. Now that the application is submitted, we head back to our process here. we've just completed this task, and now we've sent the request off to the rules engine to decide how to route the request. If the strategy is bureau, it will go to bureau data, and if it is through, it goes to application, to the external service to collect the bureau data, and then we're also then go to the application routing and make a decision whether we are referring it, accepting it, or declining it. I'm going to head back to my tasks here. So one of the things we also have in the platform here is something we call a safe search, or allows you to define different views of a request. So this is the request we just sent out right now. We can see that the decision was to go to the bureau, and after that, the request has been referred to a banker to review. We can also have charts showing the different metrics for you to be able to just keep track of what the data in the platform looks like. And so now that we've reviewed this, I'm going to head back to the self-service task to pick up the request for review by the banker. So I'm going to click that review loan application. I'm going to claim the task. Now, having claimed it, I can see the data that has come in. We could also create different types of navigations within the platform. So like a tab navigation, making it easy to review all the data at once for the banker. And I go to review application. And here in review application, I can see the analysis that the different rules engine has made. So the internal rules analysis based on the rules we've defined determine that this is a low risk request. The customer can afford the loan. The risk score is 129. They would need a monthly installment payment of 3153. We did a credit check, which came back with a credit score of 735 through a credit bureau Equifax. And then the banker can make a note and decide to accept or reject the request. So in this case, I'm just going to say accept, and just leave a note there and click on accept. And the customer would receive a notification. So if I come back here, would see back to my email, have a mail to Shalin. Yes, so that's it. Your loan application. We are pleased to inform you that your loan application with the details below has been accepted. So I'm just going to do a quick repeat of the same request. However, let's say the bank decides to make a change to the process and say, oh, we're revising our credit score to say that if your credit score is above 720, there's no need for a banker to review that request. The system can automatically just accept the request. To do that, the business analyst would just simply go to Excel, modify the rules. So yeah, I'm going to change this rule from 750, make it 720. I'm going to save my changes. And here we can see the open rules project. We have our rules defined in this, I put it in the repository, and this is the glossary, the decision model, and the rules itself is in this decision folder. So I just borrowed the, what's it called, the sample project from the primer I showed earlier. And once the change is made, all that the user has to do is click on the deploy Lambda script here. If I double click on that, that should, I'm just going to drag that up so we can see it. Yeah. So we have the batch script that's just going to run the test, make sure that our test cases are still valid, and then publish the rules to AWS. So we can see that all test cases are still valid. The rules are being deployed now to AWS. And to verify that, I'm going to just come to my AWS account here. Here we can see the Lambda functions that we have. And you can see the function that we've just deployed. You can see this is updated to 11 seconds ago. So the rules the rule itself has changed now. So using the exact same data that we did initially, I'm just going to refresh this. I'm going to fill out a request with the same parameters again, and we'll see how the system behaves this time around. The system was 10,000. has a mortgage, has other loans, credit card balance is 1,200. There's no education balance. Wanted to borrow 100,000 for 36 months. And search for education. I'm going to submit that request. So I'm just going to run through it a bit faster, and I'm going to come to the task here. Self-service. I'm going to claim it. So I'm doing the review, initial internal review. I'm going to put the same values. So we're qualifying the customer for the application. And return to the mail to get the link for the loan application. Yes, so our email is coming. This is our loan request. Yeah, so filling in the same information, just 51, married, existing customer, self-employed. And we want a standard loan for 36 months. And I'm going to submit that application. And that goes off to our rules engine. So coming back to our search here, I'm just going to go to the data and just going to refresh this. So we can see the new request that we've made, same parameters, but however, this time the decision is accept. And that is driven by the change in the business rule that we've just made on without having to modify the process. So here's our process. We're not touching our process. It's live, it's in production, but the analyst makes a change quickly from the Excel sheet, deploys that to AWS, and that drives the results for the customer. And right now we can see the notification has come to the customer and says that we are pleased to inform you that your loan application has been accepted. So I think that's pretty much the demo itself. And I'd be happy to take questions with respect to the building blocks and how all of this would work.
Dipo, can you show again how you connect process your application with AWS Lambda?
Okay.
You did it quickly.
Yes. So to do the connection, so this is the process itself, and we have what we call data connector elements, and when we design the process. So these are the different data connectors that I'm using within the process, one for the loan pre-qualification, one for the bureau strategy, and one for the application routing. And each of these is tied to a connector. So if you look at the configuration on the side, I'm going to select the connector and the endpoint that I want to call on that connector. To define the connectors themselves, I usually we come to the data connectors. So I'll just reopen that. And here, this is my open rules data connector that I have set up. I'm going to just hit edit on this. And when we add a new connector, it would ask you for the name. So it's basically an identifier. Depending on the service, you might need authorizations. I didn't put any authorizations on the Lambda functions for this demo. But what you'd then do is for each of the published URLs, you'd add an endpoint. So if I publish a new rule and I deploy to AWS, I'm going to get a URL from the deployment script, and that URL is what I then use to add as an endpoint. So in adding an endpoint, I'll just click this. So let's say I do a new one now. I'll put a unique name for the endpoint, say credit score. So just to identify it, a description to help me know what it's about. The method, the AWS functions are usually called as post request. So I'll make that a post, and then I'll put the URL for the the URL would go in here. So, and I click add. And then the last part you have to do is the request body. In the request body, we create the sample JSON that would have posted to the AWS service is put here and mapped to the variables within ProcessMaker. So if I come back and show that for the Bureau strategy, for example, in the request body, there are some default values, but here I'm just mapping the variable on the form. I have a field called product type. So I'm mapping that product type to this product type property on my JSON. And once that is set up, you could test the connector to be sure it works as expected. So here I have some sample test data. And so if I hit test here, for example, I can run my request to the connector to see how that works and be sure that the connector is fine before I add it into my process.
So this is very similar to Postman, right?
Yes. So it's basically like Postman built into the platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I have one question. It could be a multi-part question. In complex business applications, the underlying data is actually already stored in the enterprise database. For example, these applications and applicant data could already be in database for the business application.
Yeah.
Are you replicating that information in your process manager or ProcessMaker? Is ProcessMaker in other words, does ProcessMaker has its own database where you're storing the applicant and application information, or are you pulling it from the enterprise business application database?
So in this example, we are collecting the data and just running it through the process, and that data is stored in the ProcessMaker database. In ProcessMaker, we have different options in how we can store the data. We can store directly in ProcessMaker. We have what we call a hybrid approach, where we can store data in an on-prem or cloud database that is separate from the application. So what you'd have in ProcessMaker will be the process and the runtime data, but the actual data at rest can be in a specific platform. In the example where we're using a use case of existing customers. So if I'm running this against existing customers, what we'll typically do is would have a connector to that data source, which will be where the data is. So the same way we're connecting to OpenRules to send the data and make a decision, we can also pull data from the data source, send that data to the rules engine, make a decision, and push the data, whatever decision, back to a data source if that is required. Or we could, what's it called? Just use it to drive the process and store it within ProcessMaker at the end of that request. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, kind of. Actually, we also have a business process manager wherein we store only the application ID or applicant ID, and not the entire application or applicant data in process manager. And using that ID, we pull the data from external sources and then pass it on to rules engines for decision making. The challenge we are having is how do we cache that data for a short running process? And do we go and make calls to the underlying business application database every time we want to, make any decision, or load it once and let it run through the whole process? And the other problem is how do we synchronize this data? And if we happen to store, let's say, applicant, for example, applicant address, and zip code is one of the field, and if that is there in the process manager database, and later on the applicant moves from one zip to another, so we have to come back and update in the process manager database the applicant's data. So for those reasons, we decided to keep just the IDs and take the hit of performance to load the data on demand. So I really like this interface that you developed, and very good, very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to add to that, I wanted to quickly show one of the other features that we have within the application, which is what we call collections. So I think I opened the wrong. Yep. So for storing data, we also have a feature called collections, which is basically we would store data if we wanted to. So beyond the process runtime data, we also wanted to store the data within ProcessMaker for future reference. So even after the process runtime data is done, you wanted to maybe have the customer data stored within ProcessMaker. You could also do that using what we call collections. I think I'd like to have Brian also help answer some of those questions. Brian is our CEO.
Yeah, Baljeet, just to address that question a little more. So, as Dipo pointed out, one of the options is so you could sync into a collection and then pull directly from a collection. You could do what you're doing, which is pull and push during the entire life of the workflow to the ERP or to whatever core system it is. But we are maintaining that that kind of unstructured JSON is basically where all the information is stored for the life of the request. But you could also have a scenario where you're syncing to the collection. So you might be having another process that is syncing the address information if that's something that's going to change, and then the process is pulling from there. So there's actually a couple ways you can do that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually basically a philosophical question. Do you store content in the process manager database, or you store content outside the process manager? Yeah.
I think it's usually a performance trade-off most times, especially once you start having very huge databases. You don't want to be moving that data over in many places, and you just want to have a central source of truth. I think in experience, customers that probably end up investing in a data warehouse tend to just use that as, so regardless of the different platforms, everybody can always refer back to the data warehouse for the current state of the record.
And we've also seen that, Baljeet, that's an interesting question when it comes to data privacy concerns. So then there is sometimes a fine distinction between data at rest, data in transit. We've noticed that there's some restrictions still in a number of industries and a number of types of customers where they might not want to have data at rest in a certain location, geography, or on-premise versus cloud. And so your ID point is interesting, right? Because that somehow gets around some of it, but then obviously there's still data going back and forth. So at what level, are we just sort of just kind of getting around old reglementation of some old regulatory kind of restriction, as opposed to just saying, well, why would it be less secure if it was in the cloud, for example? So it's an interesting point. You're right.
Yeah, regarding privacy and security point of view, I'm assuming you have underlying queues to hold records that are in a certain state. And do you have some sort of security mechanism to allow certain users to look at certain work objects that are in a particular state? For example, only certain users should be allowed to see applications that are accepted versus applications that are denied.
Yeah. There's full kind of permissioning model underneath the hood that where that gets addressed.
Okay, great. This is a great presentation. I like this product. Thanks.
I want to make a comment that this presentation is really nice proof that the microservice architecture works.
Exactly.
I would tell you, I had no idea what the Dipo is going to use open rule samples. They never told me about this. And basically they took samples and with ability to deploy them as AWS Lambda with one click of button, and all other things worked absolutely smoothly. So I would assume that if they decide to take another service, let's the same service or different service implemented with different rule engine, like Baljeet is using, for example, Sparkling Logic. And if you deploy Sparkling Logic implemented with maybe on .NET, and the same technology, the same integration will work absolutely smoothly. And so they have, there are no configuration here. There are no code, absolutely no code. It's just pure configuration efforts. And more than that, if you compare these efforts with, let's say, AWS standard configuration tools, for example, API gateway, it's a lot of troubles. Here it was just one click and entering URL for endpoint. This was quite impressive integration.
Yeah, we, just to add, we really love the simplicity of, one, not having another sort of web interface in terms of how you configure the rules, then being able to just push the rules, and then from the economics of it, also just knowing if we want to tell our customers, well, you can literally buy by the call, so that's truly a microservices model, and it's just unbelievable level of flexibility. So yeah, we're really impressed.
Yes, that's really a good confirmation that modern technology works well in a very practical environment. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, very good. Dipo, congratulations. And you did this so fast. That's quite impressive because application is not simple at all. And thank you, Brian, and thank you, Dipo. And
Thanks, Jacob.
all attendees. If you don't have any questions, we will wrap up, and we will continue with a new session in 1 month. And thank you very much for attending.
Thanks,
It
Dipo.
will be recorded.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you for
Bye.
the presentation. Bye.
Bye.